Hey everyone, and welcome to the BadRhino Presents. I'm Mark, I'm your host today, and with me we have our brand ambassador, a titan of strength, a force to be reckoned with, multiple-time World's Strongest Man finalist, and an aspiration to upcoming athletes, Mr. Terry Hollands.
How's it
You
going?
alright, Terry? How you doing, mate? Yeah, very lucky, mate. This is the very first one we've done, so you'll have to bear with us. I suppose one of the main things that's happened in your life recently is you've obviously come out of actually being a strongman, you've moved into bodybuilding. What's the journey like that been? How's that been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good. It's been interesting. Transitioning from strongman to bodybuilding, probably are people that are not real avid gym goers perhaps wouldn't realise, they think, oh, you're just lifting weights, and they're actually quite similar. It couldn't be further from the truth. The training is actually very different. Although you are lifting weights, it's in a very different way. So with a strongman, it's all about the amount of force you can produce and the amount of weight you can lift, whereas with bodybuilding, it's about sort of actually focusing on contracting muscles and how you move rather than shifting as much weight as possible. So it's been quite a good transition, but for me, it's been a good learning experience as well. Yeah. Sort of learning about the other side of sort of gym stuff has been really interesting. The nutrition side of it's obviously very different, which is good. It's all been part of a learning journey. But for me, I mean, I'm one of these people that always need to focus. So going from sort of strongman and having such a massive focus in my life for such a long time to then sort of be left with nothing would be quite difficult. So the bodybuilding is something that does interest me, and yeah, I just feel like that's sort of for me a good sort of transition and a good change, and something that I can really sort of focus on for a good few years, until I decide to do something else.
Yeah, no, mate, it sounds great. And with that, I assume you've already touched on it, the dietary requirements. So, I mean, from a strongman, I've seen you change. I've worked with you for a few years now, and I've seen you change from strongman into bodybuilding, and even more so, like just leading into a bodybuilding event, and your physique changes drastically. Is that dietary controlled, or?
Yeah, I mean, from since I started the bodybuilding, my weight's been like up and down through the journey. Like at the moment, I've been on a bulk almost, so in a surplus of calories, but the actual training doesn't change. Like it's bodybuilding training, it doesn't really change that much through the sort of changes in nutrition. So yeah, most of the changes you sort of would see in my physique, yes, at the moment, so I'm in a surplus of calories on a bulk at the moment to try and build some muscle, and then when I diet back down again to get on stage, you sort of almost just got to hope that you've managed to build some muscle and it stays, because that's the other thing. Managing the diet is not just starving yourself and trying to get as much fat off as possible. You're trying to retain as much muscle as possible. So it's quite a tricky thing to do. But yeah, I've been on that sort of bulk and trying to build some muscle. And then obviously, hopefully, when I diet down for stage next, I'll have a little bit more muscle in the right places to what I did last year.
So you competed a couple of times now. One of the only people to compete at the Arnold's is both a strongman and a
bodybuilder. Yeah.
Has there been any real challenges from the transition? Have you found anything particularly difficult about it?
I mean, I prefer the training. At the stage I'm at in life now, the bodybuilding training definitely suits me more than the strongman. It's not so taxing on the joints, it's not so tough on your body in terms of actual real pains, if that makes sense. You get the aches from training, like the muscle aches, that's totally normal. But you don't get the joint pain as much because you're not focusing on lifting as much weight as possible. You're almost trying to make the lifting harder for yourself rather than adding more weight a lot of the time. So you can do things like slowing the tempo of the movement down, doing extra reps, things like that. So you don't always have to increase the load. So that helps me manage a lot of old injuries that I've had. But the biggest thing is, I mean, obviously, the difficulty from going from strongman to bodybuilding was having to unlearn a lot of the ways that I lifted. Yeah. So it was all about trying to create as much force as possible when doing strongman. I've had to almost sort of reprogram myself to sort of not do that because that's not the best way to build muscle.
So with that, you your mindset, I assume, had to change. Well, you've just said you had to unlearn most of what you'd learned through your years of strongman. How long did you strongman for ago?
It was around about 17 years. I mean, I think the thing with strongman, you know, you judge every training session on how much weight you lifted on every exercise.
Yeah.
So almost that's the most important thing that you're focusing on through a session. So if you're doing a certain movement for this amount of sets and reps, if you then had lifted more weight than the last time you did the same session, it's a very obvious progression. Whereas with the bodybuilding, it's more about how you feel.
Yeah.
It's more about how the muscle feels after the session, whether you feel like you've worked it hard enough. Because sometimes with a strongman, you know, you might have bad knees, but in terms of the muscle pain, you don't actually feel any different, even though you've progressed the load or you know anything like that. But with bodybuilding is all based on sort of, you know, focusing on the muscles that you need to train and making sure that they're worked hard. Okay. It's almost, and also another thing is probably sort of losing the ego, because it's sort of, everyone expects me to be lifting big weights, whereas a lot of the time when I go in the gym now, I'm not lifting big weights, and I'm lifting, you know, they're still moderately heavy obviously, but they're not anything compared to what I used to lift. So getting that out of my head, that people are going to be looking thinking it's not as strong as it used to be. It's not about that. It's it's more about sort of just how it feels and working the muscle rather than trying to lift as much weight as possible.
So I suppose that, I mean, you've been on a couple of gym shoots with us before, and I know from the last one you just walked up to a car and just randomly lifted it because it's what you've been programmed for 17 odd years to do. But would it be fair to say, and you've been on this journey for maybe a lot longer than people anticipate, because pre your own transition, you know, you had your own transition while strongmanning, and actually if you look at most of the strongman competitors, they are probably of a similar physique as older Terry, maybe not as defined muscular. I won't say fat because obviously it's not, it's muscle, but you know what I'm getting at. What led to that journey? What made you go, right, do you know what, actually I look in the mirror, this isn't me, actually what I am is what we see now?
I mean, a lot of it was obviously, you know, you look at statistics, simple statistics. If you see guys walking around that are 200 kilos, they generally don't make old bones. That's the first thing, and you know, and that's the harsh reality of it. Obviously, it was for a purpose and it was for a goal, but you know, you do sort of hit a point in life where you start thinking it's not just about the now, it's about the future. And obviously, a big change in that for me was when my son was born, because prior to that, obviously, I only had to focus on myself and my partner at the time. And it was probably a bit selfish, if I'm honest, you know. But when Zach came along, it all of a sudden everything changes, and you think, I now have to, you know, do right by him. It's not just about me. So, you know, the initial sort of weight loss down from 200 kilos down to like 150, which was what I was competing at in the end, was mainly for health reasons. And you know, I want to be able to go and play basketball with Zach in the park or play football. Not that I'm very good at it, but you know, if he wants to do that, and it was becoming increasingly more difficult to do that at the stage that I was at, sort of as he was getting older, I was like, this has got to change. And you know, in terms of my quality of life and everyday tasks have become a lot easier. You know, I'm still very large. You know, I'm still 24 stone or whatever I am at the moment. So, you know, I'm still a very big person, but, you know, I'm just not quite as, you know, perhaps unhealthy as I was in terms of my life is not as difficult on a day-to-day basis as what it was at 200 kilos.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody watching, I can attest how tall Terry is. I'm 6'3" myself, and I'm sitting here looking like a small child, apparently. What is your most proud moment in your career so far? And that can be from strongman or bodybuilding, or even a mix of both.
I think, I mean, probably, I know it sounds a bit cheesy and a bit cliche, but the fact that I've been able to inspire the next generation of strongmen as first and foremost. I've also sort of been able to help people on their journeys in terms of changing their life around a little bit. Because I don't think that necessarily what I was doing with my life when I was bigger, doing strongman, and when I was at my heaviest, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing because I was chasing a goal. And it was, you know, it was, and I think, you know, to get the most out of yourself in life, you've got to be able to push yourself at something. And, You know, I think that's where you really sort of learn a lot about yourself as a person, and it helps you improve in a lot of other areas in your life if you're determined in one thing. And yeah, I think the fact that I've perhaps been able to inspire some people to get on their journey, no matter what it is, you know, you can, you know, I was big into sort of reading a lot of sports stuff when I was younger. So I wasn't just inspired by strongmen, you know, it was rugby players, it was athletes, you know, and you can sort of get a lot of inspiration from just people that have really sort of pushed themselves at something. And I've been very fortunate that I've been able to do that, and that's probably the biggest, you know, positive thing that's come out of my journey.
Yeah. To be fair, you've touched on some of the sort of what I wanted to discuss next, and 2 points actually. First, you touched on the rugby thing. Now, I don't know if many people know this, but you actually played a bit of rugby back in the day. How far did you get with that before you sort of changed?
So I was playing local rugby as a kid for my school and stuff like that. I then signed for Harlequins when I was 18. I spent just over 2 years there on a development contract. Didn't work out, came to an end. I moved to New Zealand, played 2 seasons over there, and then came back and pretty much jacked it all in and started doing strongman. So, you know, it wasn't my path and it wasn't my journey, although I was a pretty good rugby player. You know, when I was at Harlequins, I never actually made it in the first team, but I played second team games, so in the A-League. So, you know, I didn't quite make it to the top team in the club, but I was playing a lot of under 21s and second team games. So, you know, I was nearly there. I was a decent player, but, you know, wasn't quite good enough to really sort of take that next step up. And, you know, I feel like actually everything happens for a reason, and I found my calling in strongman.
Like I say, I'm of a believer that everything happens for a reason. It sounds like clearly, well, you're on the path you're on, and you've done ridiculously well from it. And the other thing that you touched on was that one of your past moments is that you can inspire the future generation of strongman and bodybuilders. Is there any advice you'd give them? And it may be, again, separate advice for the separate disciplines.
Yeah, I mean, probably my biggest advice to anyone is just if you've got a goal of some sort, whether that be strongman, bodybuilding, rugby, whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be sport related. Just chase it, and you know, and don't be scared to change that sort of goal along the way. I think for me, I was saying where I was, my whole aim in life when I was younger was to play rugby for England. That was my dream.
Yeah.
And, you know, I sort of had to go on a different path because that wasn't perhaps where my journey was meant to end. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So me not getting my dream actually turned out to be the most positive thing that could have happened in my life. So, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing is just chase your dreams, aim towards something.
Yeah.
And, you know, and don't be scared to diversify along the way.